Okay, so tonight I wanted to check out something that combines two of sort of my favorite people to watch and listen to, and that is Jordan Peterson and Bill Burr. Now, I hope this isn't a super clickbaity title. It says Jordan Peterson on comedian Bill Burr. I hope that it's actually going to be some extensive commentary or opinion from Peterson about Burr instead of like maybe one sentence he says in an interview or something. I have no clue. This video is more than 9.5 minutes long, so we'll see. I'm just curious to find out what Peterson thinks about Burr. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
Like they have any idea what it's like to be tempted at that level, right? Like they have groupies as they waddle out to their Mercury Tracer, parked on the other side of a dumpster. Really, you're beating them off? How can I judge these guys? I can barely handle the temptations of Facebook. I'm going to judge Tiger Woods.
Temptations of Facebook.
I golf. I don't walk off the 18th hole and there's a busload of Scandinavian women waiting to fuck my brains out. Sorry, ladies, got to go home to the wife, right?
You know, Louis C.K. a while back talked about Tiger Woods, and I really liked it because people were complaining.
Okay, so he misspoke here. He's really talking about Bill Burr. Oh, all right. Okay, let's see.
About Tiger Woods and his affairs.
Yeah.
And also about Arnold Schwarzenegger and his affairs. And one of the things that Louis C.K. pointed out, quite in a very comical manner, was that, well,
he didn't even get. Why is he? Okay, I shouldn't be too hard on him. I have misspoken before many times in my own videos. I usually bleep it out and put the right one, the right name in the, in a text. But twice now, I mean, I don't know. I'm just confused as to how he's getting them mixed up. They don't even look remotely familiar or similar, and they don't even have a close name. All right, well, whatever. He's talking about Burr. Here we go.
Many men aren't having the affairs of Tiger Woods. But that's not because they're good men. It's because they don't have, I think he said, a busload of Swedish bikini models waiting for them at the final hole. So the idea would be that you should conduct yourself so that you are attractive to many women, maybe that you have your pick of them, but then you should pick one. And that's a sacrifice. Obviously, that's a sacrifice of a sort. It's a strange sacrifice because, I talked to someone, a comedian recently, who told me of one of his experiences in Las Vegas. So he went to Las Vegas with a sports superstar. And they went to a party, and what literally happened at the party was one woman brought forward a small group of other women, all very attractive, and basically told the sports...
Whoa. Is that just my monitor? That's weird. Sorry about that.
...of other women, all very attractive, and basically told the sports legend that he could just pick one of them and she would go home with him, right? And so that had all been arranged beforehand, and he said that he's been in many situations where something like that has happened. And I thought, well, that sort of is appealing to the Hugh Hefner playboy 14-year-old fantasy that sort of gripped our culture from the 1960s onward. But imagine that you sleep casually with 100 women in a 6-month period, or a 3-month period for that matter, or a 3-week period. I don't care, pick your time frame. And you say, well, what, and you're ecstatic with yourself because you've been validated by this opportunity. And I'm not making light of that. It's not nothing to be attractive to women like that. It's really something to be attractive to women like that. But it isn't obvious to me that your choice to conduct yourself in that manner enriches your life and the life of other people more in any way than picking one person and actually having a relationship with them. It's only true that that promiscuous pathway, let's say, is better if you can actually divorce sexuality from all the other elements of life. You say, well, it's about variety and it's about impulsive pleasure. Or maybe it could be even slightly deeper than merely impulsive pleasure. It could be shared impulsive pleasure. But I don't think you can do that, because sexuality isn't divorceable from family and from morality and from all the other elements of your life. And if you're mature, you know that. And so you make a decision. You make a decision not to capitalize on your opportunity, not to misuse your opportunities. And you know, a huge part of the Me Too phenomena, a huge part of this battle that's being played out in our culture is a consequence of the failure of men to recognize that. Now, it's not only the failure of men, let me be absolutely clear about that, because, for example, with the example of the sports superstar, the women who are lining up in front of him, parading themselves and offering themselves, are deeply complicit in this pathological game. And so it's pretty clear anthropologically as well that, you know, sexual...
So something that I was thinking of, and I want to just say it before I forget, he's talking about, I really have to turn my brain gears on when I'm listening to Peterson. A lot of times the message that he has is so profoundly simple. It makes so much basic common sense, right? But the way he words his thoughts, I'm just really have to focus. He just is so eloquent in the things that he says that I want to make sure I'm grasping. Like, I almost feel like what he's saying is going to be just a notch or two above what I'm able to grasp, that I just really focus in. But fundamentally, I really get everything he's talking about. And he was mentioning, you know, about sexuality and divorcing. Basically, he's making the argument, in a sense, for morality with regard to, you know, not being promiscuous. Kind of, that's where he's going. He's approaching it from like these different angles, and maybe he's not even necessarily making the argument for it. He's just sort of, you know, talking about these things. And when he was saying those words, when he was saying that, I was thinking about how a lot of times people, they do look down on or poo-poo the religion, the guidance that different religions try to instill in people, right? And you know, there's not necessarily a religious argument here, but the point I was going to make is that I feel like in a lot of ways that there's common sense reasons for a lot of these guidelines that religion instills in people. Yes, religion can get extreme and way too fundamental and literal, and we understand all that. I'm talking about people that aren't necessarily enmeshed in those extremes, but, you know, basic things like taking care of yourself and being faithful, or, you know, or, well, with regard to the New Testament, the Old Testament, I'm thinking of Christianity, right? Because that's what I'm the most in touch with. But just common sense sort of values and guidelines for kind of like an outline for life, and these do's and don'ts sort of that have been laid out for us, that in a lot of ways it's just got a common sense reasoning behind it. Because if you try to keep yourself as pure as you can, I know it sounds so obnoxious to say these, to kind of word it that way, but the point I'm trying to get is, if you try to live your life as cleanly as possible, you don't run around and sleep around and raise the possibility of having children out of wedlock that maybe you can't support, and then them growing up to have a fatherless home, let's say, which happens a lot of times, and then their lives being all screwed up because there's not a father around. And the same actually goes with women too. I'm approaching this from the perspective of a man, because that's what he's talking about. He's coming at it from the male perspective. But either way, men or women. And if you know, you don't sleep around, stay faithful, you can prevent. Don't get addicted to harmful substances. And that's a whole other thing. I honestly feel like people should just be able to do whatever the heck they want to themselves. But I am able to divorce in my mind the fact that I personally don't necessarily agree with it. But also, if you are doing things to your body that's not good for you, hard drugs, whatever, terrible, awful, awful diet, not taking care of yourself as much as you can, you have all these consequences that can happen, more often than not, can happen to you. So in a lot of ways, these guidelines that are handed down through religion or whatever, it's a good, solid framework for trying to live as full of a life as you can with the least amount of negative consequences for bad behavior and actions, if that makes any sense. Now, yeah, you don't even have to be religious to follow these sorts of guidelines. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily something that is exclusive to religion, but because these things are built into a lot of religions and people adhere to that, that can help keep them from things that aren't going to be a very healthy sort of life to be living, whether psychologically, mentally, physically, things like that. So that's kind of what was flickering through my mind when he was talking about that specifically. I don't know if that's where he's really coming from, but that's just something that occurred to me when he said that. Okay, I'm going to go back just a little bit.
Sexual choice tends towards a Pareto distribution, especially for men. So most men have very little selection at their disposal, and a small number of men have excess opportunities. The question is, what should that small number of men do? And you might say, capitalize on it and to hell with the consequences. And it's a powerful...
Consequences is one of the words I was trying to search for when I was saying what I was saying. A lot of times bad behavior leads to bad. And you can say, well, who's to say it's bad? Well, I guess if you analyze certain behaviors that can lead to all these negative ramifications, like, let's say, sleeping around, having children without being able to provide a solid, nurturing family for them, and the consequences for their lives, all these trickle-down awful effects that can happen because of bad, or let's say, behavior that affects not only you, but other people around them. So consequences, yeah.
Powerful argument, but I do believe it's wrong. It destabilizes the society.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it does your soul any good, because...
Okay, I know, it destabilizes society. He's absolutely right. In my opinion, he's absolutely right. I feel like one of the biggest problems that we have in this country, that probably is the root of a lot of the problems, like, let's say, drug abuse, crime, promiscuity, violence, okay? A lot of this can be directly traced back to the very real problem that we have in this country, and a lot of others too, but I'm, speaking mostly about the US, is the fact that we are becoming increasingly a society of fatherless homes, and it's affecting almost all races in this country. And that has done more damage to this country. That has been the reason for pretty much all of the issues that we face as far as those sorts of bad things in society, is because children, they don't have a stable home life. Yes, people can be brought up in a home life without a father, and they can end up just fine. But statistically, they don't. And this is becoming more and more and more of an issue. And it started with the whole, sexual liberation and sexual, and all that. These are the bad consequences of that sort of revolution, or whatever that, was happening in the 60s and 70s. It's it is sown, it sowed terrible seeds, and generations later are paying the price for what I kind of feel is selfish-ish behavior, because I feel like people should be able to do whatever the heck. At the same time, doing whatever the heck can have so many bad consequences doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing to be doing that. I just don't think the government should have any say in things like that. But society's paying the price for it. And I feel like it has done so much harm to kids, and it's just snowballing more and more. And I don't know what it's going to take to come back from that. I don't know. The problem is the pushback against that, going to the other sort of side of it. What's going to probably happen is like this religious revival, which I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like that sort of thing might lead to fundamentalism that's just going to be too extreme. I've talked before about the pendulum, that it usually seems to go from one extreme to the other. But anyway, and yeah, for your soul, humans, some people they don't seem to have any issue with sleeping around or whatever with however many people and partners, and it doesn't necessarily seem to affect them. But for a lot of people, it's probably not the healthiest choice for them psychologically to get so intimate with so many different people. It has a negative effect on someone, or on a lot of people, probably on most people. And not just psychologically, but the ramifications of, like I said, that behavior that can lead to things like children without fathers, or children without a stable home life, abortions. What can you do?
This is the society. Yeah. And I also don't think it does your soul any good, because the problem with treating other people as casual sexual partners, let's say, is that you also treat yourself that way simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that does you any good. Because you're not, unless that's what you want to be. If you want to be a casual partner, it's like, well, I wouldn't say that's a particularly noble ambition. You should be able to do better than that. Mm.
All my heroes are going down. Arnold Schwarzenegger, another great man. Another great man. Taken down by that gold-digging whore of a maid he's got.
Okay.
And I'm not saying he's not a piece of shit for doing what he did. It was a piece of shit.
All right. So what it looks like here is this is just, I've already seen this. I've already done a reaction to it. I'm not going to play the whole thing again. But so this wasn't necessarily, well, this felt a skosh clickbaity, because Jordan Peterson wasn't really talking about Bill Burr himself. He was just talking about the points that were made, and then he branched off into other discussions. So, I kind of was hoping for something a little bit different. Actually, as I was getting into this and watching Peterson talk, I sort of forgot that this was even supposed to be something that related to Bill Burr, because I was so caught up in where he went with the discussion. But I didn't intend for this to get so philosophical on my part, as if you can count my rantings as philosophical. But I didn't know that it was going to lead to that. I guess I should have known better, because we're talking about Jordan Peterson, and he's a very deep thinker, and he has interesting things to say. A lot of people seem to have a problem with some of the stuff that he says, but to me, he just makes so much sense that I can't help but agree with pretty much everything I've ever heard the man say. And I agree that it's not necessarily a lofty ideal or goal to be someone that, wants to be as promiscuous as possible. Obviously, that's what you want to do. That's fine. Me personally, that's not something that I think is like something wonderful to aspire to, but whatever. But his point is that these things do lead to negative consequences that are harmful for us as individuals, for society as a whole. But humans are the way they are, and this is the way they're going to be. It's just, it feels like it's so much worse than it used to be. And I hope that maybe in the future things will kind of get a little bit better as far as that goes, or I don't know. You know, you can't control what people do. Well, government tries to, but things like that, I don't think it's anything that government has any business getting their nose into. But having said that, that doesn't necessarily mean I think it's a good idea to live one's life that way. It can cause so many problems, so many long-term problems, and it's just a shame that a lot of times the people that end up getting damaged the most through that sort of behavior are children who come about as a result of things like that. And that's not necessarily a statement of support for or advocacy for something like abortion, because even that's harmful psychologically to people. Anyway, yeah, well, it's kind of heavy stuff to be looking at. And I thought maybe it was going to be a little bit sort of funny-ish because we're talking about comedian, but it wasn't. Kind of depressing. Oh, well. This didn't go as long as I thought it would, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I don't have anything else to add, so I'm going to wrap this up. Let me see you guys later. Bye.